All right, good morning. How's everybody doing today? So let me just do a quick refresher to make sure that the video's showing up for you guys. This is Paint with Lovejoy and our daily demo. We've been going almost to about 2 months now. It's been awesome. And all the stuff on the demo is viewer requested. So if you want something, if you want me to paint something specific, please leave a comment, either in the chat or in the comments on the replays of the other videos, and I'll add it to the list. All right, so a little bit of what you're looking at. I am using a fresh panel, and it's a flat panel compared to the stretched canvas to where you have, a little bit of width here. And it's an 8 by 10. And I do have a image, my base image already drawn on here. So you've got two options. You can either pause the video, draw what you see, and then pick up the video for the painting portion. Or in the description box below, there is a link to a traceable with this line drawing on it. You can purchase it, download it, you print it out, and then with carbon paper, you would transfer that to your canvas or your paper. And the traceables are great for my beginner painters, so you don't have to stress about trying to draw, and you can focus more on painting. So whichever option works for you, go with that, and then pick up the painting portion. All right, so for today's painting, we've got our nice horizon line here. We're gonna kind of have like a light yellow here. And what we do above the horizon line, we're also going to mimic a little bit below the horizon line because this is a really calm morning. So we've got a nice, almost picture perfect, smooth reflection here. And then we've got a bunch of trees, and then we've got a little dock right here, and then our little red boat. So it's going to be a cute little painting. All right. So because I'm on the smaller canvas, I am starting with one of the smaller brushes. I'm on a middle flat brush. And it's also a filbert because it's got the curved edge. But if you're on a larger canvas, please feel free to jump up to a larger brush or adjust your brushes. I tend to paint with the same brush quite often. And if I'm using a brush that's too big and you need a smaller brush, please just switch and do what you need to do. All right, so we're going to make a kind of a lemony yellow color, starting off about 1-to-1 ratio of white to yellow. And we're going to start here on the left-hand side. And like I said, everything that we do above the horizon line, we're going to duplicate it below the horizon line. So I'm going to be keeping with these kind of horizontal brush strokes like this, just because I feel like it's appropriate for today's painting. But if you want to try different brush strokes or the slaps or the finger painting, please feel free to adjust and do kind of something different or what you're feeling for today. All right, and we are just going to kind of create a bit of an abstract shape. It's almost like it's either the sunrise, feels more like a sunrise, to where we've got the light just peeking here, and then we've got some blue skies coming up, or sunset. So taking some of this color below that horizon line, and just kind of slightly mimicking. It doesn't have to be perfect, because again, it doesn't take a whole lot of suggestion of color or direction or movement for our brain to pick it up and go, oh, this is the reflection down here. So awesome. Hi, Mike. Hi, Denise and Anita, or Annette, sorry. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us today, and appreciate all the pictures you guys are sending me of your paintings, and it's nice to see your progress and evolution. Doing great. All right, so around this little yellow color, we're actually going to do our buffer layer of white because we do have blue here, and I don't want any green in my sky. So we're going to take our white paint, and I apologize in advance. Super exciting on a white canvas to put white paint, but we're literally just doing like a 1/4 inch buffer of white. I am slightly over, excuse me, I'm slightly overlapping the yellow-white mixture. But by putting this buffer here, when we move to our blue paint next, we'll mix the blue into the white and not overlap the yellow. So this is how we're going to buffer our paint so we don't get green in our sky or water. All right, so like I said, just a little 1/4 inch buffer around that. Then I'm going to clean the brush really good, and we're going to go to a light blue. And we'll start a little bit light blue here, and then a little bit darker, and then darker as we get towards the edge. All right, so same thing when we're mixing our colors. Pull some of your lighter color aside, your white, add a small amount of your pigment, start light and add other colors, or add your pigment as needed. I did 2 voiceovers this morning, so I'm thinking of so many different classes and things that I say, so I've got a lot going on in my head right now. All right, so we're taking this light blue color and we're gonna fill in probably a good portion of this, and then we'll just do a section of it down here because we're gonna do our green for our trees reflecting. But we're gonna go ahead and fill this in, and if you wanna switch to a different brush stroke, you can. And when you come close to where we have our buffer of the white paint, be a little bit more controlled with your brush strokes, because again, you don't really wanna make that green, and you can kind of wiggle, maybe do the stabbing method that we've done before, but you kind of want to bring that blue kind of close to the yellow, not too much, and just blending it into the white. All right. And if you have to mix your shade of light blue 2 or 3 times, don't stress on the exact same shade. All right, just gonna fill it all the way up. And then we're going to take some of this below that horizon line, and then I am actually going to come back with some white, and we'll do a little bit of blending with that as well, because there is a nice little white haze and then a little bit darker, intense yellows in there that we'll add. All right, and if you are on a stretched canvas today, carry your color around the tops, the sides, and the bottom. It just looks nice when you do hang it on your wall, having that color wrap around the edge. All right, so same thing when we're in the bottom in our reflection. Be very cautious and a little more controlled as you're coming up to the blue, to the white and the yellow paint. And let's see, just so you can kind of see, we'll just basically fill in from this kind of curve to the left. We're not going to go over the boat area, but we're going to save this for a bit more of the trees that we'll be reflecting. And again, remember to take a deep breath, just relax. It's a nice morning to paint. If you have any frustrations or anxieties, just put it into the brush and wipe it into the canvas. If you happen to paint over your boat or over the dock or anything, or if you paint your color all the way up to this line, don't stress about it. Acrylic paint's really nice. You can just layer new colors on top of it. All right. Oh, hi, Rhonda. Glad you could join us. Excellent. All right. So while this paint is wet, I'm going to make a little bit darker blue. And we're going to place it right on top of our colors. And this is called wet on wet blending. And you can play with it if you want darker or lighter than what I'm using. You can totally adjust to what you need. This is also a fun part to even start finger painting. All right, and then we're doing a little bit below as well. And again, if you mix your shade 2 or 3 times and it's a little bit different, that's okay. All right. And we're just going to keep going a little bit darker and a little bit darker, so add more blue. And again, your shade may be a little bit different than mine, so you just want to go a few shades darker than what you were just using. And again, keep in mind that when you do this wet on wet blending, it does change the color a little bit, just because you're mixing it into a base color with our light blue that we had on there initially. Like I said, I think this is just my week to kind of trip over words. So, all right. And I do like that the reflection on the water is just a little bit lighter than what the sky is. So I'm going to go just a touch darker up here with more of that direct blue, But again, you can do whatever you want to your sky and do it right now while your paint is wet. This is while you can do some of the blending. All right, so I'm going to leave that there for a moment. I'm actually going to move my water so I don't knock it over. And I'm going to grab my pointy brush and I'm going to go back to the white paint, and I'm going to kind of overlap a little bit of the light blue and a little bit of the yellow. And I just want to do that right now while the paint is still a little bit wet so I can do some of the blending. And trying to keep, because as I was going with the horizontal brush strokes there, just trying to keep them in kind of softly blends. If you end up picking up some of this blue, you do want to wipe your brush off before you place your tainted blue brush on top of the yellow, because that's going to be really hard to kind of get rid of. So as you kind of paint with this color combo, you learn a few little tricks about basically a cool color overlapping a warm color. And doing a little bit here below the horizon line. We'll come back in at the end of the painting with some of those water lines, those little ripper lines that we did in the fall leaves painting. Oh, okay, so I'm looking over any questions, yeah. Oh, good suggestion, Rhonda. I'll add that to the list. That'll be cute. And hi, Mia. Nice of you to join us. Hi, Annette, thanks. So her question is, do I only use Liquitex Basics or other brands? So it kind of depends on what I'm actually painting. For teaching, for stuff like this, the paint that I'm using here, because I buy in the half gallon, it is what we call Chroma Acrylics. I believe it's an Australian brand. And you can order them from Blixer. I think you can get them from Michael's. I'm not 100% sure. But since they don't sell them in the smaller containers in the States, the closest consistency to what I'm using here is Liquitex Basics. And I kind of started with Liquitex and Golden Paints. That's the other brand that I like. Back in college and high school, and you do tend to kind of stick with the first one or two brands that you like. I was trying to think of a few of the other ones. For oil paints, the Georgia oil paints, even the Blick oil paints were pretty good. I wasn't a huge fan of the Blick student grade paints, but the Blick studio paint is nice. And again, you'll just see a difference between student grade and artist grade paint between the brands. Golden's got a nice buttery consistency. Liquitex is really cool for, they have great pigment, great consistency, and then they transfer and mix well between inks and acrylics and watercolors. Actually, I don't think they make oils. I can't recall if I've seen that. But they even make the spray paint, airbrush stuff, watercolor. Like it's really kind of cool. But I do recommend that you try different brands, find what works for you. Maybe you like one brand more than another. Maybe you like one color in one brand and another color in another brand. And kind of just developing a little combo of what you like. That was probably a long-winded answer to your question. So right now I'm actually grabbing some yellow with that pointy brush and just kind of having these little kind of finger pockets of color, a little more intense saturation, overlapping the light yellow and also overlapping some of that white area in between our light blue sky. And then also putting a little bit below the horizon line. We're going to be moving into our trees next. Actually, we're going to put our deck on, our base color, then we'll move into our trees above and below, and then our boat. So we will kind of jump around so I can let that background dry just a little bit. All right. And I guess another question that's usually related to paint brand brushes. I would say you could buy cheaper brushes and cheaper canvases and panels, but put your money, I can talk today, put your money a little bit more expensive with the paint. So buy better quality paint and you could get away with buying cheaper panels and even cheaper brushes. And the synthetic brushes work really well for a lot of watercolor stuff and even a lot of acrylic things. Okay, so let's see, we're gonna move back up to the middle brush. We're gonna go to the raw sienna and put the base coat for our deck on there. and it's just kind of a little section of a deck. All right, I'm actually just going to use that direct raw sienna by itself. And again, because this is a bit on the transparent side, I'm going to put it on a little bit thick. And if you need to, just kind of hold your brush at like a 45-degree angle, and it'll go on a little bit thicker compared to perpendicular, and it applies a little bit more transparent. All right, and while we have this on here again, while it's wet, I'm going to wipe off a little bit of that excess paint. I'm going to grab a chunk of that yellow, and on the left-hand side of this dock or deck, we're going to place that on there, wipe off that excess paint, and then with a light pressure, I'm just going to kind of smush that yellow into the raw sienna. Again, this kind of gives the indication of where we have the light source coming from here. So this would be the lighter area. All right, so letting the background dry, let's go ahead. Oh, I forgot to put red on my plate. We're gonna go ahead and put our base over here. And if you want to do a different colored boat, you can. I'm gonna go with red. And we're gonna kind of do the same thing. We're gonna put our base color on here, and then we're gonna put a little bit of a highlight and a little bit of a shadow. All right, and I actually like the pretty bold red, so I'm going to use the red by itself. If you want to mix it, make it more orange with yellow or a different color, go right ahead and do that. But I kind of like how this is using red, yellow, and blue, and then we'll have our secondary color of green in there. But the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, do make for a really nice composition. And it is a very bold, high contrast color combo to use. And again, like I said, I end up using the same brush quite a bit. If you need to use the pointy brush for this, go right ahead and switch. All right, so I am going to leave this brush with the red on it. I'm going to pick up the pointy brush, and instead of white, because I don't really want to make pink, I'm going to use yellow for the highlight. So just like we did on the dock here, we're going to slap the yellow on there, and then I'll wipe off the brush, and then with a little bit of pressure, we're going to push this into the red. So kind of right under that railing, I'm going to slap some of that red, and you are going to notice that the light colors get eaten up in the darker colors very, very quickly. All right, so wipe off that excess paint, and then again with light pressure, we're just going to kind of push this yellow into it, into the red. And again, you're going to notice that the color shifts a little bit. So if you lose this highlight, if you end up moving your brush too much, wipe off your brush, grab a little bit more yellow, place it on there, and then with less pressure and less brush strokes, just kind of push that into it. And again, this is something that just gets more comfortable with more practice. And the more that you get the feel for the pressure of the brush and even what it looks like to mix colors, the easier this becomes. So doing kind of the same thing at the front of the boat. And then we're going to jump back down. I'm going to go back to this brush. We're going to put red and kind of mimic that little highlight there as well. And we will come back and we'll put a little bit more of an intense shadow, so that way there is a difference between the actual boat and the reflection. And again, this just is how we're creating this magical illusion on a flat surface. And I can throw that back in there, we don't need it right now. All right, so going back to that yellow, and this time we're actually going to go on the top because this is where the reflection would be, and then we'll pull that little curve in at about this area. So again, thinking that this is the top of the boat, even though it's the reflection, putting that color on there. Get a little bit on the front. Actually, I'm not sure if that's the front or the back of the boat. All right, and then again, And even just notice how I angled that a little bit compared to that angle. That angle's going a little bit towards, both angles are going towards the right, different and opposite corners. All right, so light pressure, just kind of squish that yellow into the red, slightly changing the color. All right, and for our shadow here, kind of keeping with that theme of using our primary colors, we're going to use a little touch of blue. And right where the real boat and the reflection meet, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the yellow, but we're just going to place our blue, then we'll wipe off our brush and go back and do a little bit of blending. And we're going to be blending in towards the reflection, not so much the physical boat. So we'll be blending down towards, going down towards the bottom of the canvas. All right, so placing that in there, wiping that brush off, and then again with that light pressure, but I'm going to be pulling it this direction. I don't really want the shadow going up into the physical boat. And again, that light pressure. If you found that you got way too much of that blue on there and it's becoming, you know, almost too dark, too powerful, take a paper towel, wipe off some of that excess pigment, and you can reapply the red paint. All right, and then something else that I like to do so that way we don't have the same intense color. I did wipe off the brush a little bit. I'm going to go back to the blue, kind of wipe my brush through it so I'm picking up a little bit of that pigment. And then with the residual of what's on my brush right now, I'm going to go up to the top boat. And basically what I'm doing is blending that residual paint, the light amount of pigment that's on my brush, into the red. So it's a way that you can kind of diffuse without adding a huge glob of pigment to it. And then right here, I'm not liking that harsh line as much. So I'm going to grab some of the red paint and go right on top of it and soften that line a little bit. So again, when you do your blending, it is a back and forth between using the new color that you introduced as well as the original color that was underneath it before you started your blending. All right, and let's actually just go ahead and finish the boat since we're working on it. We're going to be going into, let's see, we've got kind of a lighter rim right here, and then it's a little bit darker, and we're going to use some few shades of gray. So I'm going to pull some of this white aside. Tiny amount of black is going to go a long way, and I like to kind of push it on the side, and then I can start blending it in with the white and grab a little bit more as needed. All right, so again, that's kind of that light gray. We're going to go in the middle of the boat. And again, remember to breathe. And I did paint over my boat a little bit with the watercolor from the reflection. So I'm just making sure that I go over that area, and then we're going to get a pretty strong white right there. So while we have this in here, I want it a little bit darker to show that we've got this nice little concave area. So I'm going to grab a little bit more black. We're going for a darker gray. And right out the back, I'm going to kind of slap that on there and then pull a little bit of it out. And then kind of going right on the perimeter of this rim. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to clean the brush really good, and I'm just going to put some pure white right here on the top, and then we'll move over into our trees, and we'll move up to, whoops, not yellow, need white, not yellow, but then we'll move over into our trees. And again, I had a few spots to where the water and even the boat color had overlapped this area. So this white's just kind of cleaning it up and giving that base of the boat, or the edge of the boat. All right, so I'm going to take this color just right along the top rim here. All right. And let me take a quick look up through the phone. Oh, that's translating nicely. Okay, good. All right, so we're gonna go back to that middle-sized brush, and this is another place to take out some frustration and anger. We're gonna be doing that kind of dotting, stabbing method to add our foliage of our trees. So it will be very, very similar to how we did that fall reflection, I guess last week or the week before. All right, so let's see. We're going to start with this brush, and again, we're going to kind of keep this tapping method. And as I do this tapping method, I am kind of moving and twirling the brush a little bit so it's not the exact same mark that we make over and over and over again. So we're going to start with just the green, and if you want to practice on the plate, you can. And I'm going to say every couple of 4 brush strokes or stab marks, come back and grab some more paint. We're going to start out here on the horizon line, and it's going to be kind of small. And they're going to get a little bit bigger, and then we'll have a good chunk here that's going to go all the way up to the top. So again, at home, just kind of observe the shape that you see I make and where I place it, and just mimic that to your best of your ability. And again, it does not have to be exactly what I do. So trust your instincts. If you're inclined to put this color or put some foliage or something in your painting that I do not put. And then no matter what you do, send me pictures of what you guys paint. I was actually putting some student photo collages together, so I'll be scheduling those out on social media, but it's just so cool to see the diversity, to see the different styles, and like I said at the beginning, just to see where you guys are each evolving at your own rate with where you started and the skills that you are acquiring. So it's very nice to watch. All right, so we are going to go back in with a few other colors, so that's kind of our base. And like I said at the beginning, whatever we do above the horizon line, we're going to do a little bit below to give that nice reflection. So kind of keeping that same. But for this, when you do it below, it is okay if you let some of the other underneath color shine through. Because again, this is a reflection, and we just need a hint, an illusion that we have these things above the water reflecting on top of the water. All right, and let's see, let's move over here. We'll put that tree trunk on last. Okay. And again, we've got a big section hanging out up here, so we'll be getting that on there. I just want to get this one on the canvas part so it can dry a little bit while we're working on the other ones. Again, this is very stress relieving. This does destroy your brushes a little bit faster than treating them nice, so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's get some of this up here. All right, we're going to be moving into a yellow and green mixture next, just a little bit lighter shade, and then we will do a little bit of green and blue. And then we've got a tree trunk, and then we'll probably come back and clean up that little dock. All right, so your call, how much yellow you want to add to your green. And again, if you maybe start lighter, and then when you make your next batch, it's a little bit darker, that's okay. Because even as we kind of stab it onto this wet paint again, it is going to change shades and colors. And I will likely refresh my yellow for some more pure yellow and apply that on top of here. And that gives, again, a really just nice contrast. And again, remember to get out of your chair, look at this from the distance of 5 to 10 feet away. Generally looks better from that direction. And then when you also take your picture with your cell phone, and it's like when I will step up and look and see what this looks like through the camera, When you look at it on your cell phone, it's the same thing as looking at your painting from 20 feet away without getting out of your chair. So nice tool to utilize in our modern world. All right, so I'm actually just wiping off that excess paint. You don't necessarily need to clean it all like crazy because I'm going to be going to the green and blue mixture next. And if you're already pretty dark green on here, you may just use the blue directly by itself, because again, as we stab it on here, it does mix with the underneath color and kind of change a little bit. So again, just to what you need. And I'm going to go ahead and just start using that direct blue because it is mixing and I want it a little bit more darker, intense. And then we're going to put a little down here. Oh, awesome. I just looked over. See a few more of you jumping on. Excellent. Thank you guys for joining. Awesome, awesome. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go back to my stabbing. But just let me know what you guys need. Okay, so same thing with that, because I do want to go a few shades darker. And again, you can see it does ruin your brushes, so don't fall in love. Don't do this with a brush that you absolutely love if you buy expensive brushes. So I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of black, just because I want it to go just more contrast. I personally like a lot of high contrast. Not everybody does, so it is a personal preference. All right, we will be putting a little tree trunk in there too. I forgot how fun this method is. All right, all right. So I'm actually going to let that brush clean. We'll wipe it off. Let it soak in the water for a minute. All right, so we're going to move back to that pointy brush. We're going to apply some pretty thick paint here because we're going to put a few little tree trunks in. We've got a tree trunk that's going to be the reflection, and then we're going to get a few of our little water lines. And then I'm going to go back and we're going to just kind of re-accentuate that horizon line. So for our tree trunk, it's actually easier. This is burnt sienna. This is raw sienna. We're going to do about a 1-to-1 mixture. And it's just because that's going to thicken it up a little bit. By themselves, they're both pretty transparent and thin. And you can see I've mixed a decent amount. And I'm going to use a pretty good blob because this is pretty wet. So I basically want to be placing my paint on here and then pulling my brush right back. I don't really want it to mix with the green. And if yours mixes with the green a little bit, or even if mine does, we will just work that into our painting. So we're thinking that this is the tree trunk. Again, our horizon line's right here. So just getting that tree trunk, and I already started a little curve of the branch. And just do the best of your ability to kind of mimic this tree shape. You start with the tree trunk, then we're adding branches, and then we'll add a few smaller branches. And if you're painting at home, definitely just let all that green dry, and then this will be so much easier to do your tree trunks. So we've got another little tree hanging out here. And we don't need to see all of the tree trunks for our imagination, or all of the branches for our imagination to go, oh, that's a tree trunk, okay. All right, so we also need that reflection happening down here on the bottom. So we don't quite have to connect this because I'm actually going to put some more green. So I'm going to kind of hover my brush right here. We're going to go down a little bit and just kind of mimic it. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we have this little branch out here. And again, this reflection, this water is moving. So if there's a little deviation or a little warped effect to it, that's okay. We're still going to recognize it as a reflection. All right. And with this color made, I'm actually just going to go right over that dock one more time, and then we'll put our highlight on there. We're just going to basically cover up what we did on that first step. So hope you didn't like it too much because it's going away. All right, so putting that new layer on there, I'm going to grab that yellow again, left-hand side, putting that highlight, and then just kind of squishing that highlight in there. And then we're going to do the same thing with a little bit of a darker shade. So I'm going to grab, let's see, that burnt sienna. We're going to put it on the edge. May not be too different, but just enough. All right, and while I have the pointy brush, and we just did that, I'm going to grab a little bit of that yellow and do the same thing on these tree trunks too. Just so again, we have a little bit of that highlight. So just placing that color, and then I'm going to go back and kind of squish it into the paint. And as we, again, get into these final stages, do a few of these and then look at it from distance and go, was that bright enough? Do I need to do it again? Do I need to add more? All right, so I've got a few little, I guess, banks of this pond that we're going to add, and that will help give a little separation between our land and our reflection. And then we've got a little water lines to put in. And then I think that will bring us to the conclusion of today's painting. Not bad, 36 minutes at the moment, so doing pretty good. All right, so this one I'm actually going to make a little bit lighter. So I'm going to leave this yellow that's still here and just mix a little bit of that green with it because I do want this to be lighter than anything that I have on the canvas currently. All right, so again, we're imagining that we've kind of got this little bank right here. And it doesn't have to be a whole lot, it's just a little illusion. And then we've got a little one hanging out right here. Let me take a look through the screen. Yep, okay. All right, and again, my paint's still really wet, so a lot of stuff is mixing together. So again, you can let your paint kind of dry before you move on to some of the layers. And we've got a few foliage issues that we got to put on here. We need something out here and on this one. So we're going to go back to that stabbing method. Again, just kind of using light pressure, slightly twirling the brush. And let me throw a little more yellow on there. And this time I actually just grabbed that direct yellow, and because I'm squishing it into the green, it's changing the color just a touch. All right, so from here we're going to put some water lines. And because this is a pretty calm water and an almost mirror reflection, I'm going to keep these pretty horizontal, and they're not going to be as numerous as they are in some of the other demos. They're just going to be a few little things, and they are going to go right over some of the reflections of the trees and a little bit of the reflection. And by breaking that surface, by having the line that goes over it, it again gives that illusion of that ripple of that reflection. So we're going to start with light blue, and then we will do this with light blue first, and then pure white, and then a little bit of the darker blue. All right. So it doesn't have to be thoroughly mixed, just as long as it's in the general area. So I did wipe off my brush, and then you can twirl your brush as it kind of comes out, and that will help keep those bristles together. And then, like I said, it's almost like we're just going to drag it. You may have a little bit of a wiggle to it, but keep them pretty similar to each other, I guess. All right. There we go. I'll be able to see it a little bit more here. And if your paint's still wet like that and you pick up some of the color, just wipe off that brush with that extra paint before you move into applying more. And in a few minutes, when I get a few more on here, it'll start to look. There we go. We do want some of these kind of shooting off the edge. And it is really cool to kind of notice that this is the exact same shade of blue, of light blue. When I put it here, not super obvious. When it's here on top of other colors, it's a little more obvious. And that's a little bit of what we call color theory. Exact same color, it looks different next to this background compared to this background. And that's a concept that I have studied for years, and it's something I've always found fascinating. And many artists will study and play with color theory their entire careers. So it's just interesting how our brains interpret stuff and the power of color. All right, so we're going to do this same thing with some pure white and then some of that dark blue, either the pure blue or just a really dark blue. You can make your adjustment as needed. Do a few more. It's the ones on the really high contrast, like this light blue on top of the red or the light blue on top of the green foliage, that really makes the illusion believable. All right, so clean that brush really good. I'm actually going to start with the blue first, just so you can see the sharp contrast. And again, same thing. And it is okay if you overlap some of the lighter blue lines. And like I said, it's okay if it does have a little bit of a wiggle. They don't have to be perfectly straight. And then look at your painting from the distance and start to have that conversation with yourself going, all right, do I need more in this area? Do I need more here? How is this feeling? Each artist, each person is going to have a different kind of conversation with their painting or their creative efforts than the person next to them. So there's no right or wrong way for that. Oh, awesome. We got more of you joining. Awesome, awesome. Margaret, Sonia, Charlene. Oh, Charlene, I wanted to ask you about the Ginger Van Gogh painting you wanted me to do. So I looked that up, and I just wanted to make sure I was going to grab the correct image. So I'm assuming it is the one where it was the picture of Van Gogh that he cut off his ear, and he has the bandage, and then he's got the hat on, and then the coat with the button. So instead of Van Gogh, it's just the ginger cat. So please let me know if I am correct on that. All right, so now grabbing the pure white, and we're going to do the same thing. So again, by having the 3 shades of the light blue to the pure dark blue to the pure white, again, just creates this illusion from a blank canvas to our final painting. And as this brings us into the conclusion of today's painting, thank you guys so much for joining. Please make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, let me know suggestions of what you want me to paint in the future. Email me photos of what you paint. Check out my online school, paintwithlovejoy.com. Please keep getting creative and finding your outlets, and share this with your friends. With all the things that are going on right now, please share the therapeutic and stress relieving options with other people, because I want more happy, relaxed, kind people in the world, and this is at least one avenue to get you there. All right, so taking one final look up here, not bad. If you want to add little lines in for your dock, you could do that, but I think this will bring us to our conclusion today. So again, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and honoring me with your time, and just for getting creative and painting. So, all right, just looking to see if there's any other last minute questions. Awesome, thanks Mike, glad you like the evolution of the canvas. I think this one turned out really nice, and I do appreciate the reflections. All right. So hope everybody has a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Cheers.